Autumn in the town of Red Pines, Oregon, is postcard perfect. The kind of place where leaves fall like confetti and people still forget to lock their doors. That's not a metaphor. People really don't lock their doors. There's an almost romantic small-town innocence here, the kind that makes you think that nothing truly bad can happen. A kind of protective bubble where bad news is limited to high school breakups or the occasional moose that strays into traffic. But in the fall of 2007, Red Pines lost that innocence. And once it was gone, it never came back. That year, the leaves fell like usual, tourists still showed up for cider tastings and scenic hayrides, but underneath the surface, something else was falling apart. It began, like so many stories do, with a single name on a bulletin board. Emma Grady. Local librarian. 26 years old. Auburn hair, glasses, and a way of talking that made you feel like she knew something you didn't, and maybe she did. Emma wasn't the kind of person to just disappear. She was reliable, almost painfully so. The kind of person who alphabetized her spice rack and rotated her bookmarks by season. People say she'd walk to the library in the rain just to keep the building open, even if no one else showed up. She lived alone in a small two-bedroom bungalow just off Maple Street. Her cat, Miss Buttons, was found meowing on the windowsill 2 days after Emma missed work. That's when people started to worry. Her car was still in the driveway. Lights off. Mail piling up. Police found no signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing disturbed. Just Emma's reading glasses, folded neatly on the kitchen table. And that was it. The town murmured, but the panic hadn't set in yet. Red Pines is the kind of town where people vanish occasionally. Not mysteriously, but people leave. They move to Portland. They backpack across Europe. They run from bad relationships or worse credit scores. So, Emma's absence was sad, but not unheard of. Not alarming. Until October. Justine Mercado vanished next. 23. Nursing student. She worked part-time at the hospital and tutored biology students on weekends. The kind of girl who made homemade granola bars and brought extra to share. Her last known location? A parking lot outside the Red Pines Community College. Her car door was open, keys still in the ignition. Her purse sat on the passenger seat. Her textbook, a dog-eared copy of Human Anatomy, 9th edition, was open on the dashboard, a highlighted paragraph about the circulatory system glowing in the fading light. And this time, people noticed. Because Red Pines might be innocent, but it's not stupid. 2 young women missing in a month. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. Then came Claire Doyle. Claire was 29. A bartender at the Hollow Tree, a local bar with exactly 2 pool tables, 1 jukebox, and a framed photo of Elvis that keeps falling off the wall. Claire was tough. Sharp-tongued. The kind of woman who knew how to deal with drunk guys, broken hearts, and every type of rain the Pacific Northwest could throw at her. She didn't take days off. Ever. So, when she missed her shift on November 12th, people started asking questions. By November 13th, they were screaming them. Police conducted searches. Volunteers combed the woods. Drones were flown. Bloodhounds sniffed out false leads that ended in dead ends, quite literally. No traces. No bodies. No calls. No ransom notes. And no suspects. What they did find, though, buried in the woods behind Claire's apartment building, was something else. A shoe. A single red heel. Not Claire's style. Not Emma's size. And Justine didn't even own heels. So whose was it? It didn't match any of the missing girls. It was extra. That's when the whispers began. Maybe it's a cult. Red Pine sits in that eerie sweet spot where small-town charm intersects with Pacific Northwest weirdness. A stone's throw from shadow-drenched forests, moss-covered cabins, and more conspiracy theories than a Reddit thread on crop circles. So, the idea of a cult didn't seem too far-fetched to some. Especially when people started reporting strange lights in the woods. People said they saw bonfires late at night, deep red flames flickering through the pines. Chanting. Always just out of earshot. The kind of stuff you want to write off as teenagers, but can't. One man, an ex-park ranger named Dennis Wayland, claimed he saw figures in robes, circling something, like they were protecting it, or worshipping it. Of course, he also claimed Bigfoot lives near Rainier, so take that as you will. Others had different theories. Human trafficking. Serial killer. Drug cartel. An organ harvesting ring operating out of the abandoned sawmill. Police? They had their own word, coincidence. They told the public there was no sign of a connection. That each disappearance was being treated as an individual case. The town wasn't buying it. Coincidence? Really? 3 women vanish in under 3 months? In a town of just over 6,000 people? That's not coincidence. That's calculated. Then came December. And with it, Danielle Park. 25. Graphic designer. Lived with her sister, Elise, in a rental house off Pine Hollow Road. Danielle was different from the others, quieter, more introverted. She worked remotely, freelancing for clients out of San Francisco and Seattle. She had no ties to the other missing girls. Didn't hang out at the Hollow Tree. Didn't study at Red Pines Community College. Wasn't on any dating apps. Had no record of attending local events. In short, she was invisible. Which is probably why it took so long to realize she was gone. Elise returned home from visiting friends out of town the week before Christmas. She expected to see Danielle working on the couch, laptop open, Spotify playing some sad indie girl music. But the house was quiet. Too quiet. Danielle's phone was missing. So was her laptop. Her bedroom looked untouched. But her keys were still in the bowl by the door. That night, Elise called Danielle's phone. It rang. And then it didn't. 2 days later, hikers found something half buried in the frozen mud near the trailhead by Mirror Lake, a cracked iPhone with the screen spiderwebbed, dirty, cold. Still barely holding a charge. And on it? A video. Grainy. Dark. Unstable. Danielle's face appeared, lit only by a flickering flashlight. She was crying, whispering, breath short. The image shook as she turned the camera toward something we never quite see, just the faintest silhouette in the distance, unmoving, watching. Her last words, in a whisper that still haunts Red Pines to this day. He collects us. Then, static. The screen goes black. That's when Red Pines changed. The town that didn't lock its doors bought deadbolts in bulk. Parents stopped letting kids walk home from school. Porch lights never turned off. And the air carried something heavier than winter. Paranoia. Fear. And beneath it all, an unshakable question. Who was he? The aftermath. By January, the FBI was involved. Press conferences were held. Flyers covered telephone poles and diner windows. National media descended on Red Pines like vultures with microphones, asking the same questions the locals couldn't answer. All 5 women, gone. Still no suspects. Still no bodies. Still no pattern, at least not one anyone could make sense of. But people started noticing smaller things. Off things. Things that, at first, didn't seem connected. A second-grade teacher found pages torn from her classroom's yearbooks, all the girls' photos scratched out. A hiker reported seeing a figure standing at the edge of a cliff for hours, unmoving. When he returned later with a park ranger, the figure was gone, but a circle of pine cones had been arranged in the spot where it stood. A 911 call came in from a sobbing man claiming his wife was missing but still in the house. When officers arrived, the home was empty, and the caller was never identified. Coincidence? Or something else? Theories multiplied like wildfire. Some said it was a disgruntled ex. Others believed it was someone in law enforcement. A rogue local, someone trusted. Someone invisible. The most chilling theory? That whoever was taking these women wasn't doing it for ransom, or revenge. But for collection. That these women weren't chosen at random, but selected, curated. Like someone was building a display. And Danielle's final words? He collects us. They echoed through the town like a warning. A riddle. A prophecy. So, who was he? And what happened to the 5 women who vanished from Red Pines? Were they still alive? Were they underground somewhere, trapped, waiting? Or were they already part of something far more sinister, something that couldn't be undone? The truth is, no one knew. But in early January, that changed. Because someone left a package on the steps of the Red Pines Police Department. No return address. No note. Just a shoebox. Inside? 5 Polaroids. And in each one, a single chair. Wooden. Worn. Placed in the center of an empty room. And in the background of each photo? A different personal item. A cat collar. A college ID. A red heel. And in the final photo, at the bottom right corner, someone's finger. Long pale. Crooked. Pointing. The FBI was finally called in. Not because the local police asked for help, but because they were being drowned in a tidal wave of questions they couldn't answer. 5 women. 0 leads. One town that had stopped sleeping. Enter, but make no mistake, Reed was the best in his field. A man who could read crime scenes like novels and murderers like poems. And after one look at the Red Pines files, he said just 5 words. This man is a curator. Curator. Not killer. Not kidnapper. Not even collector. Curator. The word made people uncomfortable. It wasn't just creepy, it was clinical. Like the women weren't victims, but pieces, deliberately chosen. Framed. Arranged. Reed elaborated. This individual isn't impulsive. He's precise. Strategic. He doesn't just abduct women, he studies them. Watches them. Understands their emotional fractures. And then, he selects. The media jumped on that soundbite faster than a squirrel on espresso. Talk shows ran with it. The curator of Red Pines trended on Twitter. Podcasts launched overnight with titles like He Collects Us and The Fifth Polaroid. But behind all the viral hysteria, a darker realization began to sink in. If the curator was building a collection, what happened when it was complete? That's when a pattern finally emerged. Not from fingerprints. Not from DNA. But from something much subtler. Shared trauma. Investigators dug deeper into the lives of the missing women. And there, buried under surface-level details and social media photos, was the thread they'd been missing. Each woman, Emma, Justine, Claire, Danielle, and the unnamed 5th from the extra shoe, had attended the same obscure therapy seminar at some point in the last 2 years. The Renewal Sessions. An exclusive psychological retreat advertised through word-of-mouth and fringe wellness blogs. No physical office. No Yelp page. Just a minimalist website with pastel colors, inspirational quotes, and a single line at the bottom. Healing begins with the wound. Sounded poetic. until it started sounding like a warning. The renewal sessions were run by a man named Dr. Gavin Morrow, former grief counselor, PhD from a university in Vermont that no longer exists. Stylish, charismatic, the kind of man who could make trauma sound like a spa day. He preached something he called radical isolation therapy. The idea? Strip a person down to their emotional skeleton, confront their deepest fear, then rebuild them from the inside out. Clients were encouraged to sever ties to the outside world. No phones. No clocks. No outside communication. Time is the illusion trauma lives in, Morrow once said. Red flag, much? But people bought in. Desperate people. People who were grieving. People who needed something to work now because traditional therapy had failed them. People like Emma. People like Claire. Dr. Morrow hosted these retreats across the Pacific Northwest. Private cabins. Secluded forests. Always somewhere just out of reach of cell signal and GPS. The perfect setting for healing. Or vanishing. When confronted, Morrow didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. He met the media at the gates of his Bainbridge Island estate like a cult leader giving a TED Talk. Yes, they attended my sessions, he said with that smile, the kind of smile that makes your skin feel tight. But people in pain tend to disappear. Sometimes literally. He chuckled. The press laughed nervously. The FBI did not. But without physical evidence or direct witness testimony, there was nothing to hold him on. No warrant. No bodies. No proof. Just a trail of grief, echoes in the trees, and a man with the calmness of someone who knows he won't be caught. And that's when the phone rang. December 28, 2007. 2:17 a.m. The call came into the Red Pines Emergency Dispatch. Not 911. Not the public line. It came to the private line of Detective Elise Monroe. She was asleep at the time. Hadn't taken her phone off silent since the press started leaking her number. But that night, something woke her. Some instinct. Some shiver. She checked her phone. Voicemail. One new message. No caller ID. No metadata. The number was listed as unknown origin. The message began with static. Sharp, crackling static, like someone rubbing a mic against concrete. And then, a voice. Female. Soft. Distant. Like she was in a tunnel, or a basement. She said, "I'm still here. I don't know where. But I think he's getting ready." Pause. He talks to us like we're not real. Like we're pieces of something bigger. Like we're not people. More static. Please. Please tell my sister I didn't leave her. I didn't run. He chose me. There was a click. Then silence. And then, just before the voicemail cut off, one more sound. FBI forensics tried to trace the call. Nothing. The number was a ghost. A one-way line through what might as well have been another dimension. The voicemail was clean of background noise, no wind, no animals, not even electrical hum. Whoever sent it had gone to great lengths to strip the audio. But not perfect lengths. Because Reed caught something. On the third playback, just after Danielle says, "He talks to us," there's a faint flutter of feedback. It wasn't random static. It was music. Barely audible. But once isolated and enhanced, it revealed a song. Claire de Lune. Debussy. Played slow. Slower than normal. Like it was coming from an old cassette or a warped record player. Why is that important? Because according to Reed, that song has one very specific use. It's a memory trigger. used in some forms of trauma therapy to relax the mind just before confronting repressed memories. The kind of therapy Gavin Morrow was famous for. Which meant one thing. Danielle's message wasn't just a cry for help. It was a breadcrumb. A clue. A way to say, I'm still out here. And he's getting ready. But ready for what? That's what the FBI, and the town of Red Pines, still didn't know. What was the endgame? Was the curator preparing for another abduction? A mass display? A message? And if his collection was almost complete? What happened when it was? They would get an answer sooner than anyone expected. Because 2 weeks after Danielle's voicemail surfaced, another item appeared. Not a body. Not a phone. But a package. Left on Dr. Morrow's front porch. Wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Inside? A single item. A music box. Cracked. Wooden. Painted with faded white roses. When opened, it played Claire de Lune, slowed to the exact speed of the voicemail recording. And inside the lid, scrawled in ink. You forgot one. The call came in just after midnight. A woman. Shaking. Untraceable number. She didn't give her name. Didn't have to. Her voice said enough. I was in his house, she whispered, barely audible over the line. I saw the room. The room. 2 words. 6 letters. Enough to get a warrant. January 12, 2008. The FBI and Red Pines PD descended on Gavin Morrow's estate like a winter storm. A secluded, woodsy cabin near the Puget Sound. Picturesque. Tastefully modern. Painted a cheerful robin's egg blue, like the set of a holiday commercial. It was almost offensive how normal it looked. Morrow wasn't home. Or at least, no one answered the door. But the officers weren't waiting this time. With warrant in hand, they moved through the house like shadows. Room by room. Methodical. Focused. Living room. Immaculate. Kitchen. Spotless. Bedroom. Too neat. A journal sat open beside the bed, dated 3 weeks prior. Morrow's own handwriting. Philosophical ramblings about memory and identity. Nothing incriminating, just unsettling. It wasn't until they reached the back hallway, behind a bookshelf bolted to the wall, that they found it. The hidden door. False panel. New hinges. And behind it? Stairs. The team descended into a world no one was prepared for. What they found beneath that house, beneath that smiley, pastel exterior, was a place no one could explain away. The room. Soundproofed. Sterile. Terrifying. The walls were white, too white. Like a hospital operating room. No windows. Just a faint hum from recessed lighting. Along one wall, 5 wooden chairs. Each one identical. Each one occupied. Not by bodies. But mannequins. And not just mannequins, but mannequins dressed in the clothing of the missing women. Emma's maroon cardigan. Justine's nursing scrubs. Claire's hollow tree apron. Danielle's yellow windbreaker. And the 5th, a pale blue dress with no match on record. Likely belonging to the unidentified victim, linked only by a red heel. Each mannequin had been carefully positioned. Legs crossed. Hands on laps. Heads tilted, posed. Like they were having a quiet conversation. Or waiting for one to begin. But the horror didn't stop there. On the shelves surrounding the room were journals. Dozens. Stacked neatly. Color-coded. Labeled by name. Emma. Justine. Claire. Danielle. The 5th. And they weren't written by Morrow. They were written by the women themselves. Handwriting confirmed. Page after page of entries. Some dated weeks after the women had vanished. Others appeared fresh, ink still unfaded, as if written only days before. The contents were chilling. Not because they were violent, but because they were therapeutic. Structured like assignments. As if someone, Morrow, had continued their therapy in secret. Off the grid. Off the record. But there was more. Taped inside the covers were photos. Candids of the women before they disappeared. Walking. Driving. Smiling. Being watched. Every one of them unaware. The final page of each journal bore the same word. Written in large, capital letters. Scrawled hastily. Desperate. Final. Collected. Let that sink in. Not completed. Not cured. Collected. The implication? This wasn't about healing. It wasn't about therapy. It was about ownership. Control. Curation. Like Morrow wasn't just stealing lives, he was cataloging them. Displaying them. Making his own private museum of pain. And still, no bodies. No blood. No DNA. No fingerprints. Everything was clean. Sterile. As if the room had never been used. Or had been used, and then reset. The FBI called it the most psychologically disturbing crime scene they'd encountered in a decade. And still, no sign of Morrow. It was like he'd vanished. Gone underground. Or worse. Watching. Because that same night, as investigators were cataloging evidence, the security system at the Red Pines PD was triggered. At exactly 2:44 a.m., a figure was seen on the surveillance camera outside the evidence locker. The image was grainy. Blurred by fog. But the silhouette was unmistakable. A man. Tall. Lean. Wearing a coat with robin's egg blue lining. He stood at the door for exactly 17 seconds. Then turned and walked away. No forced entry. No message. Just presence. The media had a field day. The curator returns. He watches his collection. Talk shows spun wild theories, that Morrow had helped. That he was part of a larger network. That the mannequins were symbolic placeholders, meant to hold space until the women were returned. Some said the women were still alive, somewhere underground. Others whispered they had become something else. But one thing was undeniable. This wasn't over. Then, on January 18th, a woman named Alina Westbrook came forward. A writer. 32. Lived in Portland. She had attended one of Morrow's renewal retreats. And she had a story. Alina described the therapy as cult-adjacent. Upon arrival, participants were stripped of all belongings. Phones locked away. They were assigned numbers, not names. And then led through a sequence of exercises meant to dismantle identity. No clocks. No windows. Just routines. Sessions included things like mirror shaming, regression rehearsals, and the cryptic identification of fracture points. But the moment that broke her, the moment she left, was on the third night. A private meeting. With Morrow. She was taken into a separate room. Sat down across from him. And told. "You're not ready to be collected yet. But I see potential." She said she laughed. Thought it was a joke. But he didn't laugh back. And he didn't blink. The next morning, she left. No goodbye. No refund. Just the overwhelming instinct to get out. She had nightmares for weeks. Didn't talk about it, until she saw Claire Doyle's face on the news. and recognized her. They'd both been in the same session. 2 chairs apart. Claire had stayed. Alina hadn't. That testimony finally gave the FBI enough to issue a federal warrant. A full manhunt began. Roadblocks. Posters. Interrogations. But Morrow remained a ghost. And just when investigators thought the trail had gone cold, it got colder. Because the mannequins disappeared. 3 days after being taken into evidence, the mannequins, now stored in a secure facility in Salem, were gone. No signs of entry. No security breach. Just an empty storage unit and a single item left behind. A Polaroid. Grainy. Faded. 5 chairs. Empty. No mannequins. No women. Just a line of text scrawled on the bottom. They are no longer on display. By February of 2008, Red Pines wasn't just a haunted town. It was a headline. The case had gone national. Broadcasts, podcasts, documentaries, Reddit threads 200 comments deep. A generation of true crime junkies clutched their coffees tighter every time someone whispered, "He collects us." The FBI was drowning in tips, most of them useless. Sightings of Gavin Morrow in gas stations, ski resorts, vegan cafes. One woman claimed she saw him in a hot yoga class in Albuquerque. But eventually, finally, pressure worked. The walls closed in. And the man now known to the world as the Collector was arrested. March 6, 2008. Morrow was found not hiding in a bunker, or wearing someone else's face, or murmuring cryptic poems in a padded cell. Nope. He was at a vineyard. In Sonoma. Sampling Syrah. His arrest was quiet. No dramatic chase. No last words monologue. He even thanked the officers. Ah. So it's time. That's what the press called it, one of the most bizarre criminal profiles of the decade. Fans called it misunderstood genius. Morrow called it therapy. In the interrogation room, he was a performance piece. He wept when they showed him photos of the mannequins. He laughed when asked about the journals. He quoted Carl Jung so many times the agent started a tally. "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely," he said. "Do you not see? I was giving them peace. Rehearsal is the only form of true healing." He never confessed. Not once. But he never denied anything, either. Instead, he twisted words like wire, offering just enough rope to hang himself, then folding it into origami. When asked why he staged mannequins in a soundproof room, he smiled. "Therapeutic reenactments," he said. "Symbolic closure." When asked about the journals, "Fictional exercises. Explorations of trauma narratives. All voluntary." When asked what collected meant, "It's an allegory. You people really need to read more poetry." And then came the trial. It was a circus. People camped outside the courthouse. He signed autographs. Smiled for selfies. Wore a tailored black suit with a crimson tie, matching the word "collected" tattooed across someone's forearm in the front row of spectators. Yes, people got tattoos. That's where we were now. On the stand, Morrow spoke with eloquence. Clarity. Charisma. His lawyers painted him as a misunderstood innovator. A therapeutic radical ahead of his time. A victim of media hysteria and misinterpreted art installations. And, tragically, they won. Morrow walked. June 2, 2008. Not guilty. Lack of evidence. No DNA. No bodies. No direct proof that the women had ever even been in the room beneath his house. The journals were deemed inadmissible, obtained through questionable chain of custody. The mannequins? Therapeutic tools. The photos? Not time-stamped. Could be anything. The tapes? Still missing. And so, with a gentle nod to the judge and a Cheshire Cat grin to the cameras, Gavin Morrow left the courthouse. But something had changed. Behind the smiles, the wine glasses, the fans, there was something off. In interviews, he became evasive, irritated, paranoid. He moved twice in 6 months, cancelled public appearances, and then, he vanished. Just, gone. Left everything behind. House sold. Bank account emptied. No notes. No sightings. No whispers. The collector had vanished. Just like his victims. The years crawled by. Leads dried up. Red Pines grew quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence now, less like peace, more like trauma with a fresh coat of paint. The families? Most stopped asking questions. You can only scream into a void for so long before the echo stops answering. Podcasts moved on. The true crime world found new monsters. And Red Pines was left with cold cases. So cold, they began to frost over. Until July 14, 2022. Montana. The Beartooth Mountains. 2 hikers were scouting off-trail near a ridge known as Dead Elk Pass when they stumbled on something unusual. A patch of ground that echoed when stepped on. They dug, curious. What they uncovered was a sealed storm shelter buried beneath a ring of dead trees, half swallowed by the earth. Rusty. Chained. Bolted. They called it in. And when officials opened it, they found something that would turn a decade-old mystery into something darker. Much darker. Inside were 3 things. 7 skeletons. 3 reels of 16mm film. And a handwritten letter, addressed not to the police, but to the curious. The skeletons were arranged in a circle. Seated. Facing inward. Each one positioned in a chair. Each chair labeled with a brass plate. Emma. Justine. Claire. Danielle. The 5th read, Cass. The name never previously released to the public. The 6th, Alina. The 7th? Blank. Just a number. 7. Forensics confirmed it. The DNA matched. All 6 women who vanished between 2007 and 2008 were there. Including Alina Westbrook, the woman who once testified against Morrow. Which meant she had returned to him. Willingly. Or not. But it was the 7th skeleton that raised the most questions. A woman. Mid-30s. Still unidentified. No reported missing persons matching her DNA on file. Which begged a terrifying question. Was she the last? Or the first? The reels of film were even worse. They were recovered, restored, and reviewed by federal analysts. The contents remain classified. But according to one leaked report, each reel showed sessions. Not therapy. Not torture. But something in between. The final reel cuts off mid-sentence. A light flickers. Then goes black. And a voice whispers. Someone will find this. They always do. The handwritten letter? We'll read it in full in part 5. But here's how it ends. They were never prisoners. They were portraits. And art does not beg to be understood. Only seen. Signed. The curator. The reels were silent. Grainy. Shaky. Fragile things, 16mm film stock long since considered obsolete. But the FBI's technicians handled them like sacred relics. They loaded the first reel. The projector clicked. And then they watched. Each film was labeled with a name. Emma, Justine, Claire, Danielle, Cass, Alina. One reel for each. 6 women. 6 sessions. 6 portraits of control. There were no screams. No blood. No chains. Just a chair. A woman. And Gavin Morrow's voice, calm, deliberate, like a bedtime story wrapped in razor wire. "Tell me what hurt you the most," he said in the first reel. Emma sat stiffly. Silent. Her eyes flickered toward the camera. "I said," Morrow continued, "tell me the moment you fractured. That's where we begin. Not with facts. With pain." She spoke. Slowly. Quietly. And he listened. Not like a therapist. Like a conductor, guiding a symphony of suffering. Reel after reel. The same rhythm. Each woman seated alone. Each session a descent into something colder than cruelty, coercive empathy. Morrow would validate. Then invalidate. Praise. Then disorient. One moment, he called them brilliant, brave, transcendent. The next, he questioned their memories. Implanted new ones. Rewrote old traumas with surgical calm. "They never loved you, you know. That's why I do. I see the wound, and I don't look away. Your pain has value. Let me preserve it. You're not a victim. You're a canvas." There was no yelling. No visible force. Just hours of psychological erosion. Gaslighting. Rehearsed affection. Weaponized trust. FBI profilers coined a term for it, emotional harvesting. Because that's what it was. He didn't want their bodies. He wanted what hurt inside them. He harvested their grief, fear, confusion, pressed it like flowers between the pages of their journals. Preserved it in the grain of old film. Like pain was an art form. Like these women were masterpieces in progress. And then came the final reel. Unlabeled. Damaged. But playable. No woman in this one. Just Morrow. Alone. Seated in the same chair. Facing the camera. Staring. Smiling. And speaking softly. As if to us. "You think this was about death? You still don't understand. They weren't victims. They were volunteers. Broken things that asked to be restored. You see monsters. I see curations." He leaned closer. The image flickered. "I never killed them. I transformed them. They were messy. Unfinished. Abandoned. I gave them purpose." He stood. Walked toward the camera. The footage blurred. Then steadied. His face now inches from the lens. Whispering. "That's what you never understood. I didn't take their lives. I collected their pain." A pause. Then. "That's what makes them beautiful." End of reel. His final letter echoed that same delusion. Written in Morrow's careful script, the letter addressed not the police, not the victims' families, but the curious. It read like a manifesto. Equal parts apology and love letter to his own madness. He referred to himself not as a killer, but a memory archivist. Claimed he created emotional museums no one else had the courage to enter. And at the end, just before the signature. "You will never find me. Not because I hide, but because you still expect monsters to look like monsters. They don't. They look like help. They sound like healing. They wear pastel sweaters and say things like, 'You're safe now.'" Morrow's body was never found. No trace of him in the shelter. No blood. No sign of finality. Just a coat left on the back of a chair, and one final Polaroid. An empty chair. Facing the camera. Brass plate on the front. 8. The theories exploded. Some say he died in that bunker, alone, consumed by the same psychological prison he created for others. Others claim he escaped, fled to South America. Or Eastern Europe. Or Alaska. One viral photo claimed he was living under a new identity in Iceland, teaching meditation on YouTube. Unconfirmed. The fact that Gavin Morrow's legacy lives on, not just in crime files or cold cases, but in the way we talk about trauma. In the way we commodify suffering. In the way brokenness becomes performance. Because he didn't just take lives. He told a story so convincingly, some people believed him. Some still do. Some serial killers chase chaos. Others crave control. Gavin Morrow was different. He didn't kill for pleasure, or power, but for permanence. He didn't want victims. He wanted artifacts. A living museum of human suffering. And the scariest part? He almost got away with it.